Take a look at something. My chain code has been encoded in this armor for 25 years. You see, this is me, Boba Fett. This is my father, Jango Fett.
Your father was a foundling.
Yes. He even fought in the Mandalorian civil wars.
Then that armor belongs to you.
I appreciate its return.
Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of The Way of the Way, an ethnographical series on Mandalorian history and culture. I am Kaylee, also known as the Gaming Anthropologist, and this is based on my work. Before we begin, make sure to head on over to my Patreon and become a member. You get a lot of cool freebies and early access to all of my content. Okay, so episode 3, Clans, Houses, and Kinship. To understand Mandalorians, one must understand that their society is not built on territory, nor on species, nor even on shared belief. It is built on kinship. Clan is the first language of Mandalorian identity, the structure through which belonging is negotiated, obligations are formed, and history is carried forward. In a culture shaped by war, diaspora, and reinvention, clan becomes the anchor that holds a person in place, even when the ground beneath them shifts. Dave Filoni has said many times that Mandalorians are a culture, not a race, and nowhere is that more evident than in the way they construct family. Clans are not simply bloodlines. They are social organisms, flexible enough to absorb outsiders and resilient enough to survive fragmentation. A Mandalorian may be born into a clan, adopted into one, or claim one through allegiance. What matters is not ancestry, but commitment. The clan is the vessel through which identity is transmitted, and the individual becomes part of something older and larger than themselves. In the Clone Wars, the structure appears most clearly in the political landscape of Mandalore. Clan Kryze, Clan Vizsla, Clan Ren. Each carries its own history, its own loyalties, its own internal fractures. When Bo-Katan speaks of her sister Satine, she is not simply speaking of family. She is speaking of a clan divided by ideology. When Pre Vizsla invokes the legacy of his ancestors, he is not appealing to blood purity, but to a lineage of belief and action. Filoni has explained that these clans function like houses in medieval Europe, where political alliances and rivalries are woven through kinship ties. But unlike European nobility, Mandalorian clans are not static. They expand, contract, merge, and fracture as history demands. The concept of the house adds another layer to the structure. Houses are coalitions of clans, bound together by shared interest or allegiance to a particular leader. House Vizsla, for example, is not a single family, but a political constellation, a network of clans united under a common banner. When a Mandalore rises, clans and houses reorganize themselves around the new center of gravity. When a Mandalore falls, those same structures splinter, each claiming legitimacy through its own interpretation of tradition. This flexibility is not a sign of instability. It is a survival strategy. Mandalorians have endured repeated planetary devastation, civil wars, and ideological schisms. A rigid kinship system would have collapsed under such pressure. Instead, Mandalorian kinship is porous, allowing new members to enter and old members to redefine themselves. This is where adoption becomes central. Adoption is not a secondary or symbolic practice. It is one of the primary mechanisms through which Mandalorians reproduce their culture. Jon Favreau emphasized this in The Mandalorian, describing foundlings as the future of Mandalore. Din Djarin's own story illustrates this principle. He is not Mandalorian by birth, yet his identity is unquestioned. The moment the Death Warrior lifted him from the rubble during the Clone Wars, he was reborn into a new lineage. The Armorer's words, "This is the way," are not a religious command, but a kinship affirmation. Din belongs because he was claimed, and because he accepted the obligations that come with that claim. This adoptive kinship echoes real-world practices found in many cultures. In some indigenous societies, adoption is used to strengthen alliances or replace lost members. In ancient Rome, adoption was a political tool, a way to ensure continuity of leadership. In diaspora communities, kinship often expands to include those who share experience rather than blood. Mandalorians follow the same anthropological logic. Their survival depends not on biological reproduction, but on cultural transmission. In Rebels, Sabine Wren's story offers another perspective on Mandalorian kinship. When she returns to her family after years of estrangement, the reunion is fraught with tension. Her mother, Ursa Wren, speaks not only as a parent but as a leader of Clan Wren, torn between loyalty to her daughter and loyalty to the Empire. Sabine's journey with the Darksaber becomes a negotiation of identity, not just personal identity, but clan identity. When she trains with Kanan, her frustration is not about technique. It is about the weight of expectation. She carries the burden of her clan's reputation, its alliances, its failures. Filoni has said that Sabine's arc is about coming to terms with who she is and where she comes from. A struggle familiar to anyone navigating the complexities of family and heritage. Kinship also shapes Mandalorian obligation. To belong to a clan is to inherit its debts, its alliances, and its enemies. When Din accepts Grogu as a foundling, he accepts not only the responsibility of care, but the responsibility of teaching. The bond between them is not sentimental, it is cultural. The moment Din chooses to protect Grogu, he becomes a father in the Mandalorian sense, a guardian of lineage, a transmitter of tradition. The tenderness of their relationship is grounded in this cultural logic. It is not simply a story of a warrior and a child. It is a story of kinship being formed in real time. The ethics of care within Mandalorian culture are often overshadowed by their reputation as warriors, yet care is central to their identity. The Armorer's Forge is not only a place for crafting, but a place of community. When she shapes a new piece of armor for Din, she does so with ritual precision, acknowledging his deeds and honoring his growth. The act is intimate, almost parental. In that moment, the forge becomes a site of kinship, where identity is reforged alongside metal. In real-world anthropology, kinship is often described as the invisible architecture of society, the structure that determines how people relate to one another, how power flows, and how obligations are distributed. For Mandalorians, this architecture is visible in every aspect of their lives. It is visible in the sigils painted on their armor, and the alliances formed between houses, and in the rituals of adoption. In the quiet moments of care between warriors, it is visible in the way they speak to each other, not as individuals, but as members of a lineage.
It's all structured kind of like a pyramid structure to me. There was a ruler of Mandalore. The ruler of Mandalore has for themselves the protectors, and they make up these King's Guard, and that maintains balance within this warrior culture. Below that, there are separate houses. Houses are like the big faction. There would be House Kryze, which is Satine, House Vizsla, and beneath them, they have clans. Multiple clans will work under a house. So they're like smaller families. Wren is one of these families that is actually allied with Vizsla.
To To study Mandalorian kinship is to study the heart of their culture. Clans and houses are not relics of a bygone era. They are living systems, constantly adapting to new circumstances. They allow Mandalorians to remain a people, even when scattered across the galaxy. They provide continuity in the face of loss, identity in the face of fragmentation, and belonging in the face of exile. In a culture defined by movement, conflict, and reinvention, kinship is the thread that holds everything together.
This is the way.